Hello, I'm Jeffrey Sessoms. Welcome to this quick command line tutorial on how to use the Vim text editor. In this video, I'll explain what is the Vim editor, why is it called Vim, why you should use the Vim editor, the essential Vim modes, how to use the Vim command, Vim, the Vim User Interface, how to create a file, and lastly, the navigation commands. If you want to skip to a specific point in the video, then be sure to use the links in the description. Also, I put together a Vim reference document which you can find there too. Alright, let's get to it. First, Vim is an advanced text editor that is especially suited for programming. Vim stands for Vi Improved. Vi is short for visual and originates from an earlier editor called X, which used the command Vi to enter the visual mode for editing. The visual mode of X became so popular that it became the default mode of X, and the program was later renamed to Vi. Since then, many improvements have been made to Vi, and the program has evolved into what it is now, Vim, or Vi Improved. Let's take a look at some of the reasons why you should consider using Vim. Vim is widely available on many operating systems like Windows, Mac, and Linux. Also, many command line programs like Git rely on external editors. While many of those programs may have an editor setting that can be set to a specific editor to use, in most cases, Vim is the default. Another good reason to use Vim is that it doesn't require a mouse to navigate open files, which allows users to keep their fingers on the keyboard and quickly jump to the lines that they need to edit. In fact, Vim can execute very complex edits very quickly compared to other editors. Another great thing about Vim is that it can be used outside the command line interface. In fact, many popular IDEs like IntelliJ, VS Code, Eclipse, Xcode, and many more support Vim plugins that allow users to execute Vim commands within the IDE. Vim also includes syntax highlighting for configuration files and many programming languages that allow users to easily catch their mistakes. And the last thing that I'll say about Vim is that it is very well documented, and it's easy to reference that documentation within the editor itself. Now, before we see how the Vim command is used, we'll need to know the essential Vim modes. An important concept to understand about Vim is that it is a modal editor, so Vim will behave differently depending on the current mode. Normal mode interprets characters entered by the user as commands and is the default mode after executing the Vim command. Insert mode interprets characters entered by the user as text. Command line mode allows the user to execute commands. Visual mode allows the user to select a block of text. In the strictest sense of the word, the visual mode may not be essential, but it is very useful. So I'd like to show you an example of that one later on. A common problem for users new to Vim is to forget which mode is set. So an important point to remember is that pressing the escape key returns to normal mode. Let's see how the Vim command is used. The Vim command runs the Vim text editor, which accepts 0 or more option arguments that can be used to modify the command's behavior. And it also accepts 0 or more file names to open for editing. Now, before we continue, I should caution you that using Vim can be very awkward at first. So if this is your first time using Vim, you may want to watch the first couple of minutes before attempting to run it. Let's see an example of the Vim command without arguments. When we enter the Vim command without arguments, a welcome screen displays the current version of Vim, in this case 8.1.2269. It lists the author and maintainers of Vim. It also displays a short list of commands we could execute. This line here says that we can type the command :Q followed by the enter key to exit the Vim editor. So let's do that. Here at the bottom left of the screen, you can see that we entered colon, which places Vim into the command line mode. Next is the letter Q, which is short for the quit command. And to execute the quit command, we can press the enter key. Next, let's look at the layout of the Vim User Interface. When we open a new file in Vim, we can see the cursor marking our position in the file at the top left corner of the screen. Just below it are tildes that indicate empty rows or empty lines within the file. The bottom left of the screen, we can see the file name that we passed to Vim on the command line, followed by the status of the file. In this case, the name of our file is guacamole, and the status of that file is that it is a new file. In the bottom right of the screen, we see the row and column values showing our specific location in the file, followed by this portion of the file that is viewable on the screen. In our case, we are viewing an empty file, so all of the file is viewable on the screen. Now that we know the layout of Vim's user interface, let's see how to use the Vim command to create a file. Right now, my working directory is recipes. Listing the contents of the directory with ls-l, we can see that it contains a file called hot wings. To create a file called guacamole, we can enter the command vim guacamole. Examining the command syntax, we can see that we're using the vim command without options, followed by the name of the file that we want to create. Pressing the enter key opens the Vim editor. Remember, the default mode when Vim starts is normal mode, so any characters we enter are interpreted as commands. To enter our guacamole recipe into the file, we can press the I key to switch to insert mode, so that any characters we enter are interpreted as text. When we switch to insert mode, notice that we can see the word insert in the bottom left of the screen, indicating that it's safe to enter text into our file. Now we can enter the title of our recipe. Notice here that I've accidentally titled our guacamole recipe as queso. Well, we could just simply use the backspace key to remove queso, but let's say that we want to quit Vim and start from scratch. Let's try to use the quit command that we used earlier. To return to normal mode, we can press the escape key. In fact, if you're ever unsure about which mode you're in, you can press the escape key to return to the normal mode. Notice the word insert no longer appears in the bottom left of the screen after you press the escape key. To quit Vim, we type out a colon character to enter the command line mode. Next, we press the letter Q, which is short for quit, and then we hit enter to execute the command. Notice that we get an error message stating at the bottom left of the screen, no write since last change, add exclamation point to override. This is Vim's way of warning us that we haven't saved our changes. But if we're okay with that, add an exclamation point to the quit command to confirm that we want to quit without saving our changes. To do that, we can simply type out a colon character to return to the command line mode. Next, we press the letter Q, followed by an exclamation point, and hit enter to quit without saving. If we list the contents of the directory with ls-l, we can see that we successfully discarded those changes since no file was created called guacamole. Let's create our guacamole recipe file from scratch. Again, we'll enter Vim guacamole. Our default mode is the normal mode, so we'll hit the I key to enter insert mode and begin typing out our recipe. When we're ready to save our guacamole recipe, we can press the escape key to return to normal mode. In fact, if you're ever unsure which mode you're in, you can press the escape key to return to normal mode. Notice the word insert no longer appears in the bottom left of the screen. To save our changes, we can enter the colon command to switch to the command line mode, which puts our cursor down at the bottom left of the screen as well. Then we can enter WQ, which means to write our changes, then quit the Vim editor. If we list the contents of our working directory with ls-l, we can see that our guacamole file was successfully saved. Let's see an example of how to open and navigate a file in the Vim editor. At this moment, our working directory is recipes. If we list the contents of our working directory with ls-l, we can see that it contains a file here called Hot Wings. To open the Hot Wings file with the Vim editor, we can enter the command vim hot wings. Looking at the command syntax, you can see we're using the Vim command without options, followed by the name of the file that we want to open. After we press the enter key, we can see the contents of the Hot Wings file displayed in Vim. Before we start, most of you probably learned touch typing at some point and are familiar with the term home row. The efficient use of Vim is based on the use of touch typing and muscle memory, so I recommend placing your fingers on the home keys ASDF JKL semicolon. I barely crack 45 words per minute touch typing, so don't worry if you have trouble remembering where the keys are or your typing speed is slow. Just do your best to keep your fingers on the home row and avoid looking at your keyboard when you press the keys. Learning the Vim editor may feel awkward at first, but with practice, you'll commit these commands to muscle memory in no time. After we finish the Vim editor basics, I'll show you how to fast track your Vim knowledge and skills by introducing you to the built-in Vim tutor. Let's learn a few navigation commands. Remember that by default, Vim starts in normal mode, so any characters we enter are interpreted as commands. Notice that our cursor is in the top left of the screen. To move the cursor to the right, we can press the L key. Notice that as we move our cursor around, our position in the file updates in the bottom right of the screen. Here we can see that we're on the first line of the file in column 5. To move the cursor left, we can enter the H key. To move the cursor down, we can press the J key. To move the cursor up, we can press the K key. By the way, now's a good time to mention that I put together a Vim reference document that you can use to help learn the Vim commands. You can find a link to it in the description. Many of the commands in normal mode can be easily remembered because of the meaning attached to them. For example, W moves to the start of the next word. The fact that word begins with the letter W helps us to remember what the W command does. You may notice that Vim interprets some characters as the beginning of the next word, like the semicolon and the new line characters. But as you can see, the W command can be a quick way to move through a file. Now, pressing the letter B allows us to move backwards to the start of the previous word. The E command allows us to move to the end of the next word. Now that we know how to move from word to word, let's learn how to move from line to line. Right now, our cursor is at the end of the word ingredients on the 6th line. The circumflex allows us to quickly move to the start of the line and can be entered by pressing the Shift and 6 keys together. Now you see that our cursor is at the beginning of the word ingredients on the 6th line. Now, the $sign allows us to quickly jump to the end of the line and can be entered by pressing the Shift and 4 keys together. Now you can see that our cursor has returned to the end of ingredients on the 6th line. These commands are useful when you need to move to the start or end of a line to make a quick edit. A helpful way to remember these commands is the fact that they are also used in regular expressions to move to the start and end of lines. The G command allows us to go to the last line of the file. We're currently on line 6, at the end of the word ingredients. After pressing the Shift and the G keys together, our cursor goes to the last line of the file. Now we see that our cursor is at the start of the last line of the file, where you see the word turning. To go to the first line of the file, we can use the lowercase gg command by pressing the letter G twice. Now we see our cursor on the first line of the file, where you see the word hot. We can even go to a specific line in the file by typing the line number followed by the go-to command, G. Before we see that, let's change the line number setting in our Vim editor so that we can see the line numbers. To do that, we can press the colon key to enter the command line mode. Then we'll type out set number. Looking at the syntax, you can see we have the colon that we use to enter command line mode, followed by the set command, followed by the number argument. After we hit enter, you can see that Vim now displays the line numbers on the left. To turn off the line numbers, we can enter the command colon to enter the command line mode, set no number. Let's turn the line numbers back on so that we can see how the next go-to command works. Say that we want to go to the steps section of our hot wings recipe. Because steps is at line 15, we can type 15 G. Now you can see our cursor here on line 15 at the beginning of the word steps. If we want to go to the ingredients section instead, then we can type 6 G. And now we see our cursor on line 6 at the beginning of ingredients. The last navigation command we'll look at are the paging commands: page up, page down, half page up, and half page down. To demonstrate the paging commands, let's open a larger file. This file is a bit too small. Since we didn't make any edits to the file, we can simply type out a colon to enter the command line mode, then enter Q to quit Vim. Earlier, I cloned a repository containing a Python project that I created a few years ago when I was first learning the programming language. it has some larger files that we can use to demonstrate the paging commands. So let's change to that directory with cd:/documents/projects/beep. If we list the contents of the beep project with ls-l, we can see that it contains a Python file called beepexec.py that's 14,617 bytes in size. So let's open that with the command vim beepexec.py. Before we see the paging commands, I want to point out several differences between this session and our last session in Vim. The most obvious difference I'd like to point out is probably the text color, right? Here you see that the text color is blue. The recipe files that we opened earlier were simple text files that didn't contain any keywords with special meaning attached, like a source file from a programming language. So Vim displayed the text in white. This file, on the other hand, is a source file written in the Python programming language that's written following a specific set of rules or syntax that conveys special meaning. The Vim editor supports syntax highlighting for many languages, so chances are good that when you open a source file for a programming language or even a system configuration file, Vim will recognize it and highlight the syntax for you. The last difference that I'll point out is that we no longer see the line numbers on the left that we did in our last session. And that's because the number setting we switched on in the last session is only temporary. To change the Vim configuration settings so that they're remembered from session to session, we can create a configuration file called a .vimrc file. Creating a .vimrc file is beyond the scope of this introduction, but there's a sample .vimrc included in the Vim reference document that I put together. To help provide us with a little context, let's activate the line numbers with :set number. Now we can see the line numbers on the left of the screen. Now let's look at the first paging command that allows us to page down with Control-F. A helpful way to remember the page down command is to think of Control-F as moving forward through the file. Next is the page up command, Control-B. A helpful way to remember the page up command is to think of Control-B as moving backward through the file. The half page down command is Control-D, which can be remembered as moving down. And the last paging command is Control-U, which can be remembered as moving up through the file since it allows us to move a half page up at a time. Jumping to different areas of a file and scrolling the page without taking our hands off the keyboard when editing a large file is much faster than scrolling the page with the mouse or the arrow keys. That wraps up this quick tutorial on the Vim editor. If you found this tutorial helpful, then hit the like button and be sure to check out my other courses and tutorials. Now, if you're serious about improving your knowledge and skills as a developer, then make sure to click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you can get more content like this in the future. Thank you for watching.